Welcome back to Organized Chaos Stories with Shabana. I'm your host, Shabana Knight, coming to you from the Pacific Northwest. I am so glad you're here for another episode of Manifesting Mondays. This story is a really interesting one. It starts with a pretty big problem, and as you're listening, I want you to notice all the different solutions that show up along the way. See if you can catch how many things I'm actually manifesting throughout the entire situation. And at the end, I'll list them all out so you can really see how much actually unfolded. Manifestation is such an interesting concept. The idea that to think is to create, whether that's good or bad, and honestly, a lot of the times I don't fully understand how it all works out. But what I do know is that I trust it will work out. So let's dive into today's story. And side note, in the background right now of my house, I have one kid doing laundry, I have another kid in the bath. So if you hear like background noises, yeah, I got a whole house of people right now, I feel like. So there might be some background noise. I apologize in advance, but bear with me. This is a good story. All right. A few years back, it was summertime and I was getting ready to leave for work. We have a 2-car garage, but realistically, only my car fits in it, along with a bunch of other stuff we store in there. My husband usually parks his car in the driveway opposite of where my car pulls out. At the time, I was a personal trainer and I was leaving around 6:30 a.m. in the morning to make it for my 7 a.m. client. Like any typical morning, I opened the garage door, jumped in my car, backed out. As I was reversing, I realized my husband's car wasn't there. I pulled my car back into the garage, ran upstairs, and saw that my husband had already started work for the day. It was one of the days he was working from home. I said, your car is gone. He was like, what? Now, keep in mind, we live in a housing development. There's no back alley, no extra parking. You either park in the driveway or right in front of your house. I looked at him and said, I have to go to work. I'm going to be late, but good luck. So I messaged my client and said, my husband's car got stolen last night, but I'm on my way. I'll be a couple minutes late. She was totally understanding. And then I got to the gym. And when I got to work, she actually told me about a trend going around on TikTok at the time. Teenagers were seeing how many cars they could steal in a night. And it was targeted towards Hyundais and Kia vehicles. Depending on the make and model, they could break into the car and somehow use a USB stick and start the engine and steal it. At the time, David was driving a Hyundai and the car was paid off, but honestly, it was having engine problems. We were at the point where we were either going to drive it until it died or trade it in, but we knew the Kelly Blue Book trade-in value was around $500, if that. It wasn't worth putting more money into this car. The body was fine, but the engine wasn't great, and it had really high mileage. When I got home from work around 8:30 a.m., David told me he had already received a phone call from the police. They said they had found his car and that they wanted to know if we were going to tow it or if they could tow it. And so we just had them tow it. And of course, my next question was, where are they towing it to? And he said, I don't know, but the guy is supposed to call me back. The officer, of course, didn't leave a name and number, and we assumed that they were going to call back, and they did not. Nobody ever called us back. So now it's day like 3 or 4, and I'm like, where the heck is our car? When are they going to call us back? And then that night, David and Ryan had baseball. And so David is sharing the story about our car and stuff. And one of the dads piped up and said, oh, this is where they take cars. And he gave a list of the local towing yards and stuff. And so the next day, I called the first name and number that he had given us. And the car was there. So I was like, oh, good, we found our car. But the guy had also said that you need to find your car because every day that it sits there, they usually charge you like $100 per day. So at this point, I'm doing the math in my head and realizing we're already at $300, $400, and we didn't even realize we were racking up these fees. So David's like, you are better with people. Why don't you drive over there, see what we need to pay, see what we need to do, and we can go from there. And unfortunately, we had lowered our insurance coverage on that car because we knew that it wouldn't last that much longer, and we had removed the stolen vehicle coverage because we honestly didn't think our car would be stolen. So we only had the basic coverage, so lesson learned there. I also forgot to mention that the client I was training the morning that the car got stolen, her husband owned an auto body shop. So she said, you know, if your car needs to be fixed, whatever, bring it to my husband's shop. They'll give you a good deal. He will help you out. I'm so sorry. This is such a crappy situation. I was like, oh my gosh, thank you. Yes, we will keep you in the loop. So, okay, so let's get back on track. So we located the car. I went to the towing yard and I told them that, like, hey, our car got stolen. The police officer towed it here, and then they never told us where it was. And then the guy was like so nice, and he ended up waiving our fee. So the only thing we had to pay was for the tow itself, which was only $100. And I was like so thankful because it would have been about $400 at that point. I think that's what I recall on the thing. So then the next step was figuring out how to get the car towed from the tow yard to the auto body shop. And so I tell them my van needs gas and I need to check in with my husband and find a tow truck and stuff like that. And also, I didn't want to drive the car because I didn't know if, one, if it was drivable, two, if for some reason, if someone like had put drugs in it or anything like that, and any residue. I didn't want to take any risks. And so I was like, I'm not going to touch it because I don't know. So I'm like on the phone with David. I'm like, hey, I got to go get gas for the van. Next step is we need to find a tow truck and take it to the body shop. So I pull into the gas station and I kid you not, pulls in a tow truck. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a tow truck here. So I get off the phone with David and I jump out of my car and I'm like, hi. And he's like, kind of like, okay, why is this lady coming up to me kind of thing. I was like, so here's my situation. Would you be able to meet me at this place and bring my car to that place? He's like, yeah, I have to go tow this other car, but I can meet you there in 30 minutes. And I'm like, oh my gosh, perfect. So I go back to the tow yard place and I meet the guy there. He hooks up my car. I follow him to the auto body mechanic place. And now we're at the mechanic place. I Venmo him and then I'm done with that. My friend's husband evaluated the car, told us what it would cost to fix everything, and confirmed there were no drugs or anything unsafe found in the vehicle, which was a huge relief. He also let us keep the car there for an entire week while we figured out what we wanted to do with the car. Most places charge daily fees for storing the car there, but he didn't. We only paid for the inspection and the analysis. That entire week was filled with conversations about what we were going to do. Eventually, I found a place that would take the car for parts. They picked up the car from the shop and gave us a check for $1,000. And honestly, that felt amazing. We knew the car was on its last leg. The plan had always been to drive it into the ground, and we thought it was worth way less than that, but apparently the scrap value was higher, and we were not about to argue with that. Eventually, we found a really great new car for David. There was a really pretty blue car, and I said, we want to test drive that one. And the guy goes, oh, that's our rental car, so it's not really for sale, but you can test drive it. Well, apparently they really wanted to make a sale that day because we got back from driving it around and they're like, actually, if you really like it, we'll sell it to you. So I don't know if they were just doing it to, talk up the sale or whatever, but it definitely worked. It had less than 10,000 miles, came with a really good warranty. It was the current year. It was a really good price. It just belonged to the car dealership. It didn't really have any owner per se. And so we got that car, and it was like the most prettiest, perfect blue color that we had wanted. And now it's the car that both of my sons are learning to drive on, and it's David's main car. So really, this whole story is filled with lemons into lemonade. Here are all the blessings and manifestations I see in this story. 1, the client I was training the morning the car was stolen, her husband owned the auto body shop and helped us through the entire process. 2, we didn't have to search for the car ourselves. The police found it and contacted David. 3, a random baseball dad knew exactly where to look and we found the car on the first call. 4, the towing company waived the $300 fee. 5, I went to get gas and literally ran into a tow truck driver who was available to help. 6, the auto body shop evaluated the car, gave us a great deal, and let it sit there for a week at no extra charge. 7, we were able to sell the car for parts for $1,000 with zero hassle. 8, we found the perfect replacement car in the exact blue color I asked about, even though it wasn't technically for sale. It had under 10,000 miles, a great price, and an amazing warranty. What I'm trying to say is that life will always give us situations that in the moment feel really hard and overwhelming. But I truly believe that when you choose optimism and a positive outlook, more doors open. Things flow, timing and alignment show up. Because let's be honest, nobody wants to wake up and find their husband's car stolen out of the driveway. That week could have spiraled into massive stress and financial strain, but instead, everything just kept falling into place over and over and over again. And sure, the icing on the cake would have been the insurance company writing us a check for $30,000, but that's okay. Everything happened exactly how it did. Now, here are some closing mantras. I trust that even when things fall apart, they are falling into place. I choose faith over fear. I stay open and aware, and I allow the solution to find me. Everything is always working out for me. I am supported, guided, and protected, even in the chaos. What I need shows up at exactly the right time. What I need shows up at exactly the right time. I release control and trust the flow. I know that what is meant for me will never miss me. That concludes today's episode. I hope you enjoyed this edition of Manifesting Monday. We'll see what unfolds next week. I love you all. Have a great night. Bye.
This podcast is sponsored by Happy Mail. I created Happy Mail for when you don't have the words, Happy Mail does. Happy Mail sends handwritten cards of encouragement that uplift, comfort, and reminds everyone they matter. Happy Mail is better than a McDonald's Happy Meal, spreading kindness, not calories. Click the link in the show notes and get your Happy Mail sent ASAP. Limited to U.S. residents only. Hey you, yes you. Thank you so much for listening to Organized Chaos, Stories with Shabana. If you love this episode as much as I did, hit that subscribe button, leave an outstanding review, and share it with a friend who needs some inspiration. Thank you for being part of this community. Remember, in every bit of chaos, there is always a story waiting to emerge. Who knows, maybe sharing your story might inspire others to share theirs. The possibilities are endless. Let's live in the possibilities.